Okay, it is Friday night. It is late. And earlier, I tried to do a video on the animal shelter and the public participation at the September 25th commissioners meeting, and it got screwed up on the audio. And hopefully, it doesn't happen again. But I'm a trooper. I'm going to keep doing it. I thought I'd be done with this in a long time ago, but I want to do it. I want to get it done. I think it's important. And as I said before, if you were here before when I started, I'm all set. It's Friday night. I got my Union Township Dora cup. I have a beer here. I am going to get it in this cup, and then I'm going to be ready to go, and we'll have a little drinking game as we go along here during this. My my beer, by the way, is in a Hicks Watchdog beer koozie my wife got me a long time ago. So let's go. We're going to do I'm going to talk about the animal shelter. Let's all pray I don't screw up the audio again. So every week at the commissioners meeting, it becomes another goat rodeo of the commissioners dealing with the disaster that is the animal shelter. We're one of the only counties, we're the only county I actually know of that has a government-run animal shelter, not by a humane society. And our commissioners are now in a Vietnam. They're in a true Vietnam type situation where every meeting they're dedicating 30, 40, 50, an hour or more time in every commissioner meeting to the animal shelter, which must make them the laughing stock of other commissioners, because animal shelters are something that it's hard. It's very hard, but it's not hard for commissioners, because what you do is you find a humane society that you can partner with, and that humane society, you let them run the shelter for you, and they take care of things, and they typically really care about the animals. But we decided to make it a government controlled animal shelter, and now we're in true Vietnam, where every week at the commissioners meeting, or virtually every week, there's a bunch of people talking. Now, as we go through, this was this week alone. Somebody asked me to do a video on it. It was 50 minutes of just this participation. So I sped it up. So when I sped it up, it's only 28 minutes, but hope it could be a little hard to understand the people. I don't think so. Hopefully you'll get the rhythm of it pretty quickly. But as we go, I'm going to try not to interrupt when the speakers are talking, let them talk, and then come back with some comments real quick and keep us moving along. But I think it's like 28 minutes, 29 minutes of video when it's sped up, and out of 50 minutes that took place on the animal shelter at the commissioner meeting today. So let's get rolling into the video.
We'll move on with the rest of the agenda here. We're at item number D, public participation. Is there anyone here that would like to participate with the public? Please raise your hand. You'll be called on. I have to read something. We've reached that section. During this time, the board doesn't answer questions unless they want to. No member of the public can comment about a matter that is not within the purview of the board's responsibilities. Commissioners are not expected to comment on matters brought to the board. Each speaker will speak once and will be recognized by the board president before speaking. In accordance with the rules, you will have 5 minutes. So you held your hand up first. Please come up to the podium and tell us who you are and what your address is, so that Gail here can record it in the minutes.
By the way, before we start listening to the first speaker, I do want to interject. That's the typical politician bullshit speech, that we don't have an obligation to answer any questions. Remember what Dan Bongino says: all politicians want to kiss the baby, they want to shake your hands, they want to tell you how much they love you. But once they're in office, you're like pond scum to them. I feel like if somebody makes an effort to come to the commissioners meeting on a Wednesday at 10 a.m., then the commissioners should feel they have a moral and ethical obligation to the best of their ability answer questions from the public, not read some bullshit lawyer written speech about how they will not answer any questions. Now let's go to the first speaker.
3871 Field Lane, 45255.
Annette, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having us, and I'm sure you know I'm here about the shelter. A little bit about my background. My adult life, I was in healthcare corporate, retired and can't get away from animals. For the last 10 plus years, I have either been volunteering at a shelter or working at a shelter, covering front desk. I've fostered over 80 dogs. I actually fostered a couple cats once. A friend talked me into it. Covered front desk, run adoption events, vetted people that wanted to foster and adopters. So I do understand sheltering. I do understand rescue. Sheltering, and if Angie's here, I'm sure it's not for the faint of heart. It's very difficult. You're never going to have 100% agreement on what goes on. I have been watching from the sidelines for the last 3 years, and the most recent move prompted me to come today. It's my understanding that now, before a dog can be sent to a rescue, that it has to be approved by the commissioners. When you have rescues that work with an organization, they are ready that day to pull that dog, because most of the rescues are foster based. They have an opening at someone's house, like mine. You drag your feet on that, take your time. They've moved on.
So
and that dog has lost that opportunity.
Concern is rescues.
The other thing I heard was
getting
that
out the door fast.
we don't want to send highly adoptable dogs to rescue. Why not? Highly adoptable dogs, I'll tell you, I'll send you a cute little Shih Tzu right now if you'll take a little black pit bull that has skin issues. And that's the trade-off you have to make when you deal with rescues. I'm going to give you one that you're going to charge $500 for, but you're going to spend that $500 on that little black pitty. So I really would hope that you would reconsider. You're not in sheltering to make money. You will never make money in sheltering. There is no way possible. I've worked with a lot of shelter managers. I've seen the good, bad, and the ugly. I've seen a lot of good though. And it's just, don't delay letting these dogs go to rescue, because they're highly adoptable. There are dogs that can go to rescue that need medical that you all don't want to pay for. I mean, you say you have the money, and I know you do want to pay for it, so let me take that back. But if you've got a rescue that's willing to cover $500 for a heartworm positive dog, let them do it, and give them that little fuzzy Shih Tzu too.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. And before you leave, it's only fair so you get some information about that. That's never been our path forward. I heard about that this morning. I don't know where that's come from, but I just wanted to make sure that you knew that we have had some review, obviously, with the concerns that we've had in the shelter. We went back and pretty much reviewed every piece of paperwork that there is there. Mm-hmm. One of the things that has come up there is that who has the authority to remove a dog from there, and I'll give you a circumstance on that. When Claremont County obviously invests for the taxpayers a lot of money in dogs, we're a no-kill shelter, right. And then someone pulls a dog that they don't even know the dog is left or where it's went to. There were adoption fees that were available there, mm-hmm. And on some of these, people have waived the adoption fees, but no one in the shelter knows why those were waived or where they were waived from. Now, I just want to make sure we are accountable to the public for every dime that we spend. Mm-hmm. And when we spend money on services and then we don't know what the end result of that service is or where that asset went, keep in mind, even though they're dogs, just like anything else, that's right. That's exactly right. So I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that before you walked away from the podium.
Just want to make sure that you don't delay sending dogs to rescue.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, pretty much everything he said was bullshit about this accountability on expenses. There's a truth to it, but are they producing reports? Are they going through and showing you every time how much they're spending on this stuff? They aren't, because you'd find out that actually they're spending more than they did and more than the private shelter operator of a humane society wanted, and getting less result out of it. And so this fake, like, oh, we're doing this because of the taxpayers. But to the woman, my tips for public participation is they don't care about your background, really. They don't really care at all. They're just trying to cover their political asses. Remember, politicians never start parades. They join on to them. And so, she made also the representation that, I know you want to pay for it. They don't want to pay for it. They don't care. So they, dumbass, David Painter in particular, decided that it was the shelter operator's fault after having failed with 2 humane societies running the shelter, that it was actually their fault, not his, because he's a genius, smarter than everybody else in the room. And so he had this brainchild of taking over the shelter. First thing they did was jettison cats. So they already said, we're going to have subpar shelter. We're going to reduce the hours. And somehow this is going to be government run and be better. It makes no sense. So when the woman said, I know you want to pay for it, they don't want to pay for shit. I don't think they do the right thing for cats. Obviously, they don't do the right thing for livestock. But they will glad hand you when you're public participating a little bit, and don't give them any room. Frankly, every person that speaks on this issue, I'm totally with the animal people on this stuff, but every time it's got to come up there. This has got to go back to a humane society. As long as it is run by the government, it is never going to get fixed. It is never going to get fixed by in a idiotic model where the county commissioners are supposed to be doing other things, are spending a huge amount of time in every meeting on stuff involving an animal shelter because they're too stupid and they're too arrogant and they're too unwilling to admit they made a mistake to make the change that needs to be made, which is put it out for bid to start a process of getting a humane society back.
Anyone like to speak next? You bet. Tell us who you are and where you live.
Morning. My
Morning.
name is Ashley Lusinger, and I live in Warren County. I'm at 2126 Mounts Road in Morrow, Ohio. And my last name is Leuzinger. Sorry, it's a little long. Thank you for everyone's time this morning. I'm Ashley, and I have been in the foster and rescue space for several years. I work with several Northern Kentucky and Ohio-based teams, and my sister is Megan Dashley. Megan cannot be here today because she is closing pools, but Megan got me into the space. Megan is a Claremont County resident. And I got her into the dog welfare space, but she got me into the shelter. So it all started with Run Club, thanks to Michelle, our volunteer who runs that. And I took on my first foster dog with Claremont last August, Miss Holly Berry, who everyone here who works at the shelter knows Holly. And I have supported our wardens and the staff alongside large-scale hoarding cases, most recently this January, 40-plus animals, goats, dogs, cats, etc. And I've also helped with cleaning, walking, events, what name you, including installing the turf along with my sister. So much like the business, I'm in the business world. I'm also in the healthcare world, so I enjoyed this morning's presentation. We know that there's departments necessary to operate and function, much like, say, a county office, a restaurant, etc. So we know that there's going to be operational needs, like our wardens that need to be on hand for the community, but also Angie taking over for like managing those operations, and then you have your kennel staff doing cleanings, feedings, what have you, and then sort of the administrative miscellaneous. So when everyone has clear roles and responsibilities, things thrive. We're not there yet. We're not totally there. What we're asking for and have been asking for is just ongoing clarity and processes to make sure we can get to that end goal, so that we can stand Angie up for success, so that Angie can get the right people placed into these roles. But we do feel like our pleas are either falling on deaf ears or they're just not moving at the space like she articulated needs to happen, because this space does operate very differently than the traditional business world. So first and foremost, we at the end of the day want to be advocates for the dogs. They're potentially the only governing entity in this county other than children welfare that really don't have a voice. So we are here to represent them. So I think we all want the same end goal. It's just how do we get there? One of the biggest things I wanted to articulate to the team is
I'm going to interrupt here because this is another, I just can't get it. Okay. We do not have the same end goal. Are you crazy? So I think this woman, I saw this before. I had not watched this before the first time I started the live stream, but I did see this when I was doing that. And it's like, we're confused. I describe it as bridge over the river Kwai syndrome. Now the volunteers are like partners of some sort, and they're going to cover for the commissioners. I'm just not sure what the goal is, because the reality is this is never going to get fixed unless and until we go back to a humane society operator. So the idea that, we all want the same thing. And she also mentioned that we just want clarity and process. No, that's not what David Painter is not going to clarify your process. Angie is not going to clarify your process. We need to get back to like a real shelter that has an outside humane society.
Our volunteers and fosters play a very large piece of that operational and management pie when it comes to keeping this shelter running. First and foremost, processing online applications. In the past 365 days, we have had 1,539 adoption and foster applications, and only 22 of those were processed by staff. So the volunteers are handling a large majority of this work. Again, free labor. Our rescue coordinators like Tracy are working with these breed-specific rescues to get these dogs transferred quick and efficiently. It's a lot of interpersonal relationships to make that happen. I work with several of these rescues. Like articulated, time is money. We got to move fast, especially when the league and other neighboring communities are willing to help us, especially if there's high risk medical cases, things that we can't take on. Our foster coordinators like Joy, Carrie, Jennifer, and Aaron also lives in Warren County with me in Mainville, manage the placement and identification of which dogs should go to the right homes when we're processing a foster application. Again, they're handling all of the 24-hour correspondence with our fosters, email, phone call, text, etc. And they also field all of the applications. As a foster, I was the first line of defense to vet which applicants are best suited for our dog. Holly was a prey drive flight risk, so we had to be very intentional. Our behavioral team, like Chastity and Megan, work with Second Chance Dog Ranch to ensure we have a safe and effective on-site really evaluation of these dogs and their temperament. Can they be around other dogs? Are they dog selective? Are they free range? How can we handle that? And how can we get them into, again, the right homes, adoptive homes, foster homes? Last, we also have fundraising and adoption events like Megan B, Rescue Me Animal Advocacy, and our volunteers like Michelle, etc., that coordinate off-site adoption events, Whole Foods, you name it, local bars and establishments that advocate for our dogs on their menus or at their bars. And then last, on-site events like our volunteer orientations and Run Club. Joy and Michelle have been leading these, and without the volunteers leading the volunteer orientation, we won't have volunteers to be orientated. Last and not least, social media marketing. Our teams handle all of this. We do not have access to the county page, and that's fine. That's totally okay. But we are the ones advocating for needs for.
I'm going to interrupt again. She said we don't have access to the county Facebook page, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. I just don't understand it. Either there's a serious problem and we need to get back to a humane society operator, which then would have their own Facebook page for the shelter, or it's okay. And this is a great model because, as she said, it's free labor, right? I'll have the volunteers do everything out of applications. 1,539 of them will be all but 22 will be processed by volunteers. It makes Painter look like a genius to get these volunteers to do everything. I just don't understand this. It's like it's this bridge over the river Kwai syndrome, where the people who have become kind of Stockholm syndrome, they are now, part of this machine, and no longer making the key argument that needs to get made is that we got to quit dealing with the shelter in commissioner meetings. We have got to quit having government bureaucrats running the shelter. We need to get back to the model that actually works in shelters, which is a humane society. And we need to, for the first time, fund it properly in Claremont County. The reason, it's pretty simple. The Humane Societies failed the last two in Claremont County. It wasn't their fault. It's the fault of the county. And now the county's running the place and driving it into the ground even worse. But I don't know what we're doing here. We're not, now I guess we're getting an update on how great the volunteers are doing and how we don't need to do things. I'm going to see if anybody here focuses on the need of this has got to get back to Humane Society control. That should be the message.
For fosters, placements of dogs, medical resources, and emergency funding. We also have funded on our own, paying for offsite laundry, surrender fees for the homeless, buying school supplies, and clothing for our staff who need the support. And also medical fees for our fosters. And last, we also do just the day-to-day volunteering. Some of our teams, that's all they do. They just are there to do laundry, walk dogs, play with dogs, and help with meet and greet. So these women are pretty outstanding. And men, Roger is here. Roger is amazing. This is a talented group of individuals, and I'm here to ask that you continue to lean into them and their expertise. Because like so eloquent.
So now, don't fix the shelter. Lean into the volunteers and their expertise. Maybe every week we could start having a certificate ceremony where all the volunteers get certificates, so that we don't have to actually fix the shelter and we do it through volunteers. I'm just not getting the message.
Articulated. This is very nuanced from the normal operations of the county. We're here again begging for help. I do want to make sure that the county is leaning in on these resources and not trying to reinvent the wheel. We all want a better mousetrap, but I think we can do this together if we all work together and not as oppositional forces. I don't want to belabor the topic that you brought up, but that was one of the items that I had on my agenda, is that we don't really see having a board review to be agile and what we need. But we do fully understand there needs to be some relative oversight of, Angie needs to kind of know, like, where is this dog and what is the process? So I do beg of you, and it sounds like, this will be solved, that we do not want to add more red tape. As a foster home becomes available, it's short term, and they will take another dog, and then we will be again left holding back. We just don't have the room. So I want to make sure that it is truly for the right reasons and not punitive. The other example I did want to bring is just this summer, volunteers were told we were no longer allowed to facilitate our adopted meet and greets. These have traditionally, in my experience, been solely run by volunteers because our kennel techs needed to be doing their job, cleaning kennels, feeding dogs, etc. So I do ask that we reevaluate what is the best balance of power to ensure that our volunteers can still be an integral role in these meet and greets. These meet and
What is the we reevaluating? I'm just not sure I just don't get any of this.
Sometimes they're dog to dog, sometimes they're just family and kids. Meeting with these possible adopters to make sure it's a good fit. Alex, one of our newest kennel techs, has been amazing with meet and greets. Angie, I just want to say that he's been outstanding. But we again don't want to remove volunteers completely from this process, because truly our fosters and volunteers know the most about these dogs. A few just kind of stats I do want to share is we have moved 46% of the dogs out of the shelter into other facilities like the League or into rescue. That means less dogs that we need to care for with the staffing that we are lacking. So we again just want to move towards this collective vision of how can we get dogs moved fast so that the resources we have can focus on what we have. I do want to make a point that it is not realistic and scalable for kennel techs like Alex to be on site 7 days a week. It's just, I know it's temporary, but we got to evolve. Luckily our volunteers are there and ready and committed to back him up, especially this past weekend when we needed the extra hands on deck. The last things I want to close out is we are willing to continue to lean in with examples of where these processes are slowing us down or where the processes need to maybe be evaluated due to the nuance. But I do want to reiterate, like all the meetings I've watched week after week, that our volunteers want to do as much as possible to drive successful outcomes for the shelter. But I am gravely concerned that our volunteers are dwindling. I myself have pulled back my on-site time for scheduling reasons, but it's frustration. I'm disappointed. I'm frustrated. I've tried to lean in and ask for clarification and processes around how do we tap into the budgets that we've heard are there, medical funding. The last piece I will close with is the volume of resources being provided by the volunteers and especially Rescue Me Animal Advocacy. It's large. I mean, most recently a $3,500 ER invoice that is being paid by fundraising dollars, not the county. We've asked for process clarification for medical. We have not received that answer. How can we tap into medical budgets when we have high cases, heartworm cases, emergency needs? Rescue Me Animal Advocacy alone in June had paid up to $13,000 of expenses for CCAS. That's for boarding, offsite training, medical, behavioral assessments, and surrender fees. And that's excluding the dogs that Rescue Me has pulled on our behalf to take over full care for. So I appreciate the time. I'm probably over time. And again, I know I'm not a county taxpayer, but I just wanted to be another voice since my sister could not be here. But thank you for your time.
And before you leave, I just wanted to touch on a couple things. We value the volunteers, all of us do. We value the canines that are everywhere. We value the animal shelters, no doubt about that. And I think sometimes we miscommunicate on that. You have one opinion, obviously we have another opinion.
Okay. So I just love, we value the animal shelter where we took away cats and we put it into this death spiral. But let's keep going.
But I want to make sure that we have some clarity when it comes to that. When it comes to reviewing the books of the animal shelter and what goes on, we are responsible to 228,000 voters. When people come in and they express concerns with a particular operation of the county, that is going to cause us to take a look at it from top to bottom, from every dime that's spent. And that's our responsibility. I just want to make sure you don't.
We're going to look at it from top to bottom. You're the one that made the mess. Okay. So now the excuse is we need to look at it from top to bottom when we're the ones who made the mess.
Get a choice in making that call. We make that call. And that's not to say we're at odds about that. It's just, it is what it is. We're responsible for different things. When it comes to helping out, we have heard those calls, and we have had open requisitions for the hiring of people, the same as the rest of our county. The rest of our county's down 100 employees of people since COVID. all businesses across Claremont County, Hamilton County, Cincinnati, everywhere you go, people are having a hard time finding people to fill positions. And you can talk to our DJFS or our mental health board, even them with professionals, they have a hard time finding people. So we are picking up people everywhere we can.
So again, what's wrong is the model. The model of the county government run shelter is what's wrong. I don't know that's dumbass. Like now it's, because we can't get DJFS people. That's why we're having this issue.
The next thing is that people who work for a county who are extended salaries and medical benefits, you've seen those here today and what they cost, and vacations and sick leave and all those kinds of things, they are vetted when they come in. They have to fill out an application and then they have a background search. Many times this board has been accused of not hiring someone when we have to sit silent about those issues. If someone doesn't meet the requirements of actually being hired as a county employee, even though they may meet the requirements for a private business, we're not allowed to comment about that. That is an HR issue that is handled in our HR department. And especially I see that I have Steve here from the Defender's Office. He understands those kind of things and how they are disclosed. So what I would tell you is we will hire anyone who meets those requirements and is qualified and can get through a background check that is allowed to be able to work here. When it comes to medical, I can tell you, Angie came into us about halfway through this year and said that we had extinguished our veterinarian budget, and we immediately came in and reappropriated funds for that.
Okay, again, they spend shitloads more money than the private Humane Society operator wanted. They just have to keep allocating stuff, putting more money in because it's a disaster.
We don't take that lightly. We want it to be a great place. And then recently, no one has talked about the fact that we have brought our trustees over from the jail to provide the cleaning at the kennels 3 days a week.
Hey, how's that get accounted for? Now we have to have the trustees. I don't think it's bad, but the trustees from the jail are cleaning the place because we can't get people otherwise. So now prisoners are doing it.
Last week, we've increased that to 5 days a week. So we have 3 to 4 people coming in every morning from our trustees who are vetted people who are serving sentences in our jail to clean those kennels, to break up and to provide time for those permanent employees we have there to do the other things that would enhance the environment for these canines. So, I just want to make sure you're aware of that because I think a lot of times we miscommunicate.
Yeah, I'm aware.
You guys tell us things, and then we don't get that feedback that says, well, wait a minute, we have more people working at the kennel now than we did a month ago. With those additions.
They're on medical leave. They're not working.
You're talking about a couple of classifications.
And I think that's the point I'm hoping
Right.
to make.
There's a difference between vet techs and kennel techs. We both agree with that, right?
Oh, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
And our current kennel manager is on leave.
Right.
So what I hope that can be taken from at least my portion and the group is without the volunteer infrastructure, I like to compare it to an iceberg. Sort of the county has the oversight of that above the water, but below the water is that foundational basis of the volunteers and the work they do. And I'm gravely concerned that these volunteers will start leaving if we do not see improvement and better communication and processes around how do we reach Angie if there's an emergency situation? How does a rescue coordinator get approval on the fly if approval needs to happen? Because I'm glad you agree that time is of the essence and we can't wait for board approval. So thank you for your time. But
Let me just say one thing too, before you step down. There's been a lot of negativity. We all know that about the animal
You
shelter.
caused it.
But if enough of that is out there, who wants to come and work there if it's that bad? So we need to stop and think about that. Cut back on some of the negativity. Work with what we're doing with the sheriff's
Yeah,
department. 'Cause you never
propaganda.
see
Let's
that.
make it sound
We
great to
are
work
trying,
there.
believe me. Nobody loves dogs more than we do. My little spoiled dog.
You have created a disaster, Bonnie Batchelor, and you said nobody loves dogs more than you. Are you serious? You are so full of shit. It is absolutely unbelievable.
Is happy to see me every day when I come home, but I've adopted from the animal shelter in the past. But if we're going to work together, let's calm the negativity down and let's work together. We're trying to get people full-time up there, but the sheriff's department has agreed to work with us, and you're getting 7 days a week now to clean all of those kennels. I think that he sends 3, 4 people over there, 4 hours a day?
Yeah.
So that is a big help. That's work that volunteers or staff is not having to do. Believe me, we want it to be the best shelter that we can possibly make it.
my closing remark.
If you wanted it to be the best shelter, you would do what every other county does and properly work with a humane society. You are unable to do that. And now you're in this quagmire. And if you wanted it to be the best shelter, you would take cats. But you have gone into a model of minimum expectations.
To mention though is we need a plan. Like we can't keep talking about a plan. We can't keep talking about hiring. And again, that's great that we have these new resources. Very happy because we need them. But we need a plan or we need a timeline to bid this out to a humane society. It is a uphill battle. when we have
Finally.
dogs in our care where prescriptions aren't being filled. Fosters are begging for maintenance meds. And again, I never want to blame the new vet tech. Being a new employee is hard. There's a learning curve. There's onboarding. So I always want to lean in and understand what is the root. Is it a process gap? Is it a permission gap? Is it a staffing gap? A systems gap? But we're begging for just the continuation partnership and leaning in. Otherwise, without the infrastructure of the volunteer.
Continuation partnership, leaning in. Last time I checked, successory shops don't exist anymore. And she sounds like she would have been a good manager at a successory store with all these management buzzword slogans on it. She mentioned one time, get back to a humane society. That is the only thing that is going to fix this, is getting back to a humane society. That's the beginning, the middle, and the end of the speech that everybody to that podium should be making, is this has got to get fixed.
your team. I firmly believe the shelter would need to close. You would need to probably work with the league to offload those dogs.
And I need to ask you a question.
Mhm.
And since you've come this morning, when's the last time you've been to that shelter?
I'm there often.
How often? Tell me
I-
when's the last time you were there.
Normally it's about once a week. And I also collect crates from the Warren County community and I bring them out here. But in the last month, I haven't been there because I couldn't bring myself to come anymore because it's so emotionally overwhelming to sit in that decompression room and cry with a dog that is just terrified, knowing that our staff is running ragged, trying to do what's best. And I have drastically pulled back in the past month.
I want to make sure that you know that dogs that come into our kennel aren't because of irresponsible commissioners or irresponsible staff. They're caused by irresponsible dog owners. That's how those dogs.
So let's get this down too. The reason dogs come into the shelter are because of irresponsible dog owners. So I guess those 225,000 citizens you're all about, if they bring a dog in or a cat in, well, I guess they can't bring a cat in to the shelter, it's because of their irresponsibility. These people who are commissioners are arrogant a-holes towards the public. They're arrogant a-holes towards the volunteers. They don't care what you think. They're just doing their own thing. And it's all about political CYA. And they deserve all of the flack that they get. But it's got to stay focused on, we have got to get the government out of this dang shelter. It's so funny to listen to Painter a little bit ago talking about how to do, they have to do background checks and some people may not qualify. So the solution is we have prisoners from the jail come over and work at the shelter. Think about that for a second. We turn away people we're trying to hire who are not prisoners in a jail because they can't pass a background check, but we have prisoners in a jail come over to work at the shelter. This stuff is such bullshit that would fall apart upon any inspection. I would debate all three of these commissioners on any of this stuff because they are just full of crap. And the people who are the volunteers or the young lady here, they should not be putting up with it. And they've got to stay on point. As long as the government is running this shelter, it's going to be a train wreck.
Show up. So, the attack on those that are here to help, it kind of reminds me of, someone saying, well, the employee beatings will continue until the morale gets better. That's not how it's going to fix. If you guys have a plan and you know of a plan, by all means, share it with Angie and sit down and get an opportunity to talk to her.
Hey, Painter, I've told you the plan over and over again. Get your fucking head out of your ass and get back to a humane society. Put it out to bid. Be a big boy and admit you made a mistake and that the two humane societies that both told you the issue was the county, they were right. You were wrong. You tried it your way. It's a disaster. Quit wasting my tax money, as part of the 225,000 you're so worried about, on a recipe that can never work. It will never work.
She has the full requirements of this board, to assign resources or anything.
So, okay.
Well, listen. I don't either. And we're not going to argue. But there have been many other people
You're
who
arguing,
have
Painter.
organized meetings with Angie that called the last day and said they didn't want to meet because they were too traumatized to go to the shelter. I'm not traumatized. I go over there. I don't like to see. I was there this week. I don't like Angie.
In the office with you? He definitely
wasn't at the door. I went to the back. Absolutely.
So in closing,
We've already closed.
I've emailed. I've never once gotten a response. My father, Dennis Lucan, who is also a citizen of this county, gets a polite and timely response from you, Mr. Painter. And that's where I've gotten very frustrated, that I've continued to try to be very articulate in the needs, the barriers, the gaps, the clarity for processes, and trying to lean in from an educational angle versus like a negative or an attacking angle. But we've sort of gotten to this place where the tone has shifted. So I've tried to be very polite and articulate today, and I appreciate the time, but frustrations are high, and I would like to allow the other members to speak. But
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You bet. Anyone else? Please.
Okay, so I just want to reiterate, this is all the fault of the commissioners, okay? It is never going to get fixed, and everybody, beginning, middle, end at that podium it's got to get back to a humane society, because you see right now that after week after week after week of beatings, you've got nothing but the same drivel and bullshit flowing out of these people's mouths. And the thing now is, if we could just have propaganda, a lot of these people in the Republican Party, they like George Orwell's Animal Farm, meaning not because you learn from it, because that's the kind of system they like. And so this constant drivel of, if we could just be positive, if everybody could, with Bonnie Batchelor, if we could get rid of the negativity, everything would be okay. No, the reason for the negativity is because you effed it up worse than it's ever been at the shelter.
Tell us who you are and where you live.
I am Tanya Sparwak, 2940 State Route 222, Bethel, Ohio. I am here to talk about the shelter. I've been a long-term volunteer. However, I have not volunteered for the Claremont County Animal Shelter. I volunteered for the League for Animal Welfare and for Sweet Dream House Rescue. I've fostered probably over 100 cats and maybe 10 or 15 dogs in my lifetime. I am currently a nurse professor at Fortis College, so my classes are every Wednesday morning, which is what's kept me from being here all this time. to share my concerns. I am so deeply sad because I know David personally and I know Bonnie personally. And I find this to be just heartbreaking that this conversation just keeps happening over and over because I know you both to be Christian people, people of integrity, people who love dogs, people who are just want to do the right thing. And I think that's why you.
If you know them to be people of integrity, then you don't know them. Remember, Bonnie Batchelor pledged to only run for one term as commissioner, and then she just totally changed her mind saying she was enjoying it too much. David Painter ran on a platform of shrinking the size and scope of government, and his crowning achievement is expanding government to take over the animal shelter. People need to open their eyes and realize what kind of people these actually are. And this is the product of a crony political system where you get mediocre people in office.
At this office, something's went off the rails, and I am just devastated because I have a hard time defending anything that's going on here because I know you both, and I feel like you're both Christian people. So at the beginning of this meeting, we had a prayer, and we talked about the authority of government and the fact that you guys work for us. I live in Claremont County, and I've lived in Claremont County for 56 of my 56 years. I have paid taxes. I have 2 jobs, which prevents me now from working in the shelter or volunteering. But I'm very confused about why you don't open this up for a county, open up county bids for a shelter operation. I know I spoke to you personally like 3 years ago plus when this first happened, David. And
Pluses to this woman because with only speaking like half of her time, she actually brought up early on, put it for bid.
it kind of felt to me like you were just very offended that the current people were giving you a hard time. I can't imagine it's any more of a hard time than we're giving you. And that you didn't really want to work with them because they were giving you a hard time. And you felt like you could do this cheaper and more efficiently. You're failing. This is a big fat F from a college professor. This is not working. And everybody is just heartbroken because we all love the dogs. But it feels like this point you're just afraid to say, gosh, we've really messed up. We should just start over again and give this to a shelter who knows what they're doing. But you refuse to do that every single time. It's like the same conversations happen that I watch on YouTube or wherever every single time. And you all have, everybody here has the same, you have the same. And you don't want to blame, well, nobody has employees. Where I work is fully staffed. At Bethesda, where I teach clinical, they're fully staffed. And these are college educated people. This is not the problem. It's a toxic environment. That's the problem. You're not.
Bingo, touchdown, Jesus. Let's go Christian on this. Toxic environment, and it's not going to get fixed by Bonnie The people who are, the beatings will continue until the morale improves, are the commissioners. They're the ones that won't fix the underlying key problems. They're the ones that love this kind of model because this is the way Republican politics works in Claremont County. It has got to change. I'm a conservative, about right-wing as guy as you can be. And I see the folly of this model and this woman is hitting it right on the head.
Into this in a real situation where answers are going to be given out. So I want to approach this from a perspective of, let's talk about the Bible. Romans 13:1. Let everyone submit to the governing authority, since there's no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist, they're instituted by God. You are the authorities. We are your bosses. We are those taxpayers. We are asking you to do something different, and you just want to give excuse after excuse and argue. It is unbelievable. Genesis 9:2. The fear and terror of you that will be in every living creature on the earth, every bird of the sky, every creature that crawls on the ground, and all the fish of the sea are placed under your authority. These dogs, their livelihood, their life is in your hands, and you've brought it down to an argument. Let's not argue. They've brought a plan to you. How many times have y'all brought a plan? You brought a plan. Bring a shelter operation in. That's the plan. But at this point, it feels like you just don't want to say, I messed up. I think we should just probably fold this and start over again. Just admit defeat. There's so much value and integrity in doing that. You've messed up. Own it. I want to know who you guys answer to if it isn't us. Why are we continuously having the same conversation and we never get anywhere? I want to hear from Bonnie and Claire. I've never once heard other than today, it's like David's the only one's allowed to speak. There's no excuses for this. And at the end, we had our Pledge of Allegiance and justice for all. Where's the justice for the dogs? I mean, we say that, but where's the justice for the dogs? And God forbid we even talk about cats, because that was my biggest thing, that we can't take care of cats. But we're not even fighting that battle right now, because obviously you are in charge of that. But use the authority God's given you and pray about the right thing. Pray about this. Genuinely consider my heart that I took my day off to come here and talk to you. I really want you to pray about this. You guys are godly people. Go to bed and pray and ask God what he wants you to do, because I am sure it is not argue with these people and give excuses. Thank you.
Thanks, Tanya. Anyone else?
Okay, notice he doesn't have anything to say after that, because, that's the kind of people these are. These are not godly people. You are under some delusion these are godly people. These are people that will use God when it serves their purposes in their political lives, but otherwise they're about themselves. They are, so all that being said, fantastic job on that. You see what happens. Next speaker, please. When it comes up that you have got to put this out to bid, that you just argue every time, commissioners, and you have allowed this to become a toxic environment. That is 100% true. 100%. So props to that woman that just spoke.
Tell us who you are and where you live.
1151 Chelsea Court, Milford, Ohio, 45150. I'm here today on behalf of my wife, who, along with our 3 children, volunteer at the shelter. You may remember them from the past visit this summer when they shared their love for the shelter, the passion they found for helping dogs. While my wife can't be here today, I'm proud to speak for her on behalf because this cause means so much to her and our kids. That said, I must express my frustration that has been felt since my wife began volunteering back in November of 23. To say it's been challenging is an understatement. It's difficult to understand how the shelter is being managed, as it often feels driven by emotion rather than practical solutions. The very people who are often trying to help, the volunteers mostly, are often left feeling unsupported or even dismissed. We are supposed to be a united front in caring for these dogs, many for whom are victims, as you said, neglect, abandonment, abuse right here in Clermont County. Yet, instead of efficient procedures, we are met with inefficiency and inconsistency. Procedures that could streamline care and reduce costs have been offered to the staff, but seem to be ignored. The shelter's constant battle with illness among the dogs only raise your expenses and prolonging their stay. None of this is necessary if proper protocols were in place. When it comes to adoptions, it's been months since anyone has simply walked into the shelter, left with a dog. Why? The customer service is disheartening. Visitors are often met by staff member who just points them to a book of dogs. There's no real effort to engage or connect them with the animals. That's not how you find homes for dogs, and certainly not how to inspire people to adopt. The dogs that have been adopted have largely been a result for the effort, as she said, the volunteers, dedicated team of volunteers that have been vetting applications and networking to make sure dogs find their homes. These volunteers are working tirelessly to do what the shelter staff should be doing, bringing people and dogs together in some meaningful way. I personally written to Angie about a positive experience we had with another local organization. We don't need to replicate them exactly, but we should aspire to their level of customer service. No reason why policies should be put in place that prioritize the dogs, eliminate unnecessary red tape, and reduce the time they spend in the shelter. Why isn't social media being used to highlight adoptable dogs? Reach out to new audiences. Why isn't there a greater focus on the animals' homes and getting them?
By the way, go look at the Brown County animal shelter stuff. They have multiple, I think they have like a small animal, big animal, and they do a pretty good job when I've gone to look at actually using social media to highlight the animals
Out of the shelter. It's disheartening to see that the staff lack of urgency when it comes to these adoptions. And just something to consider, this very meeting is following an order. You guys have an agenda. You stick to that agenda weekly, ensuring things are done. Nothing is really missed. Why can't the shelter operate in the same way? Clear procedures. If they were able to follow a set agenda, it would be so much more efficient, effective, beneficial for the dogs. One of the most pressing issues is the need for better collaboration between the staff and the volunteers. Volunteers bring the passion, the time, the love to the shelter, and they want to work alongside with the staff and find solutions to give the dogs a second chance. However, instead of fostering positive collaboration, it often feels that the staff is resistant to the volunteers' input. They don't share the same goal to help the dogs, and they're not as cooperative and open environment that would make a more tremendous achievement. The purpose that the staff obtain the resources that have already been offered to them and adopt those resources in ways to make sense for the shelter. It will also provide training to the staff. Additionally, it is crucial to fill the longstanding open positions that have been vacant for way too long. Be the community partner we know that you can be, and rise to the challenge and making the shelter a place where staff, volunteers, and the community can work together in a positive way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Okay, so no back and forth with this gentleman. He did a good job. Could have focused more, I think, but did a good job. But again, move on. Next speaker, because we don't want to actually address any real issues here. And if we can get into some distraction thing with the volunteers taking over, we can do that. But we don't want to get to the root causes, which are the 3 people sitting right there: Claire Corcoran, David Painter, and Bonnie Batchelor.
Time is
Tell
up.
us who you are.
Time
Yeah.
is up. We have to go ahead and extend public participation.
Okay, let us extend a minute. Do I have a motion to extend public participation for a few minutes for the last speaker?
Yes. Make a motion.
Yes.
Second that.
Okay.
Roll call.
Okay, Commissioner Batchelor,
Yes.
Commissioner Painter, I'm sorry, Commissioner Corcoran. All right. Commissioner Painter, looked right at you too. That was pretty funny.
Tell us who you are. Where you live.
You asked Ashley when the last time she was at the shelter. I've probably been there 35 hours.
So hold on. Before we go to this woman, I just want to tell you too, they have the meetings at 10 o'clock. They're completely inconvenient for any of these 225,000. Remember how David Painter's all worried about the 225,000 citizens. They never have a meeting that citizens can come to. They have it at 10 a.m. But then they also relegate it, because their time is so precious that there can only be 30 minutes of public participation. Normally, there's basically none, or like one person shows up. With this animal shelter thing, it's really blossomed, but they have to extend it. Here's another kind of thing. If these commissioners gave a rat's ass about the people, their view would be, we will stay here 24 hours if we need to let every person that shows up at this meeting have ample time to speak. Not this idea that, oh, the citizens are only worth 30 minutes because we got to move on. If somebody came on a Wednesday at 10 o'clock, they should be heard no matter what. And if you don't like it, these people are paid full-time salaries, these commissioners. They should just, the attitude should be the most important people in this room are private citizens who came to speak to us. That's what David Painter, Claire Corcoran, and Bonnie Batchelor should think is the most important people in the room. And they should take whatever time they need to let them have their piece. But, they have to, but they've already predetermined only 30 minutes because we don't want the riffraff citizens bothering us. We got some certificates we got to give out to county employees for bullshit events and holidays that nobody cares about. But let's pick up.
Hours in the last 2 weeks. So I am there every day. I'm there when the inmates are there cleaning. Yes, it helps, but Alex still doesn't have time to walk dogs, bathe dogs, do the meet and greets, even with 3 or 4 inmates cleaning kennels. They were in there cleaning kennels. I was outside cleaning the play yard, and Alex still didn't have time to do anything.
Okay.
There has to be more. You can't have that many dogs and only have one kennel tech.
Mhm.
It's not possible. If the volunteers walk away, which a lot of them are wanting to do, you will drown. You will drown because we do 90% of the stuff there. Just yesterday, I bathed 5 dogs. I walked 6. I cleaned kennels after they've been cleaned because if I didn't, then they were going to sleep in that poop all night long. They were going to eat their breakfast right next to that pile of crap. Would you do that? No, you wouldn't. So why would you expect a dog to stay in a kennel from 4 o'clock at night until 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning? Would you sit in a confined space in your own urine for that long without being able to get out and go for a walk? Why do we not have night hours? I know you say there's people that are applying and you guys are not returning their calls. And there are people that have come from other rescues, other shelters with all kinds of backgrounds, and they don't even get a response from you. So don't say you're trying to hire people when you're not even responding to anybody that's sending emails. You've been saying help was coming since January. It's September. It's never came. We're the help. We're the ones that are there. We're not getting paid. We're doing it because we love the dogs and we hate to see the state that they're in. You walk in there and you look at a dog who has blood all over their paws because they chewed their hair off because they've been stuck in the kennel for so long. I just rescued a dog. If he was, or say, adopted a dog, if she was still in the kennel, she'd be dead. I adopted her with a mass that was told by your vet techs, because we have no veterinarians, that it was a lipoma. In the last week and a half, I've spent over $2,000 at an emergency vet, at urgent care, and on emergency surgery because it was a mass that ruptured. If she was in a kennel, she'd be dead because your staff thought it was just fat and didn't care enough to send her to a vet, even though money is not an option. So it's time that you really listen to what people say, because we're there. You can say you're there. You can walk in, walk out. That's fine. We're the ones there putting in the time.
Oh, there is no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And we appreciate your time.
What's your name?
No question. Thank you.
But David,
So let's face it, the shelter has become a concentration camp, and what also happens is probably anybody who is there, other than the volunteers that don't have to be there, is probably worn down by the agony of it all and no longer becomes a humane person towards some of these animals. You hear that story that your heart goes out, listen to some of the stuff that woman just talked about going on in this place. And David Painter sitting up there like a pompous ass. I go to the shelter quizzing people on when's the last time you went to the shelter, because he's got a bigger dick than you do because he went to the shelter this week and you didn't go in 2 weeks. These people are never going to solve the problem. This is a living example of how government screws shit up. And there are some things government needs to do that private can't do. This is not one of them. These brain scientist commissioners, particularly David Painter, decided to do this. And now he's in this huge measuring contest where he's got to, he can't admit that he made a unbelievably bad decision. And so he'll just let it go on. And he'll just waste more and more time. This shows you how dumb people are in public office. That's why go study people in public office. Most of them couldn't hold regular jobs. They could not hold a job in, I work for IBM and Accenture. Most of these people in politics could never hold a job like that because they don't know how to get anything done. If you look at them, the ones that say they have private employment, watch almost every time that private employment involves some government related things. David Painter can't solve problems. He can sit up there and give bullshit little speeches and try to glad hand people, and nothing ever changes. So I appreciate that woman's remarks because she hit it on the head too. They don't care. They talk, we'll spend the money. They won't spend the money. They don't care. They don't care about cats. They don't care about really solving the problem. And they don't have the earlier woman said about Christian, they don't have, part of this is the admission that you made a mistake. That is fundamental to Christianity. The admission, the contrition. David Painter can't do any of that stuff because the person that is, David Painter, I'm sure has in his wallet a card that is the David Painter fan club membership card, and has number 1 on it. And he cannot admit he made a mistake. And it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. I don't know what'll give with this because these people are just moronic that are sitting up there. And I hope it exposes to people how bad the Republican leadership has become in this county. And I am a right-wing conservative Republican. They cannot solve problems. They're a product of a crony system that promotes people who kiss the ass of the right people to get into these positions. They don't want competitive primaries. They don't have any campaign events because it's all cronies. And you're seeing that in the way these people deal with a problem they created. Remember, they created this problem by not being able to listen to Humane Society private operators, both of which told them, you're the problem. This is what you need to change. This is what needs to happen to fix this. And the end product is we spend more money than ever of taxpayer money that David Painter supposedly cares about on a shelter that delivers less result and actually less gets spent. Because the thing that gets left out is when you have a Humane Society private operator, they do a lot of fundraising and they actually basically double the budget. Now the county is spending more than ever, doesn't have that kind of fundraising taking place, and is delivering horrifically bad service and sits there and will not listen. None of these commissioners will listen to any of these people, and it doesn't matter what they say because they don't give a rat's ass about the dogs. They don't give a rat's ass about the people. They're unable to admit they made a mistake. And so they just have to keep saying making the excuses, and it's never going to fix anything.
Say we don't have any veterinarians. We do work with what? How many different veterinarians?
They don't have to know. We
I'll-
barely get any animals either.
I'll go ahead and close public participation, but then Angie, could you come up to the podium in a minute?
Excuse. By the way, they always close
now keep in mind,
public
there is-
participation.
There is no thought in my mind here of making a rebuttal.
They always close public participation when they bring their person up because they don't want anybody else to comment after that. Okay. Why don't they bring Angie up first? They had this other bullshit presentation first. Have her present first and let people respond to her. They won't do that because the people that supposedly love you and care about every taxpayer, they don't really give a rat's ass what you say or what people come into their meetings and say.
Of anything that anyone said. We value you guys. And
Oh,
we
you value.
now maybe what comes to us versus what we get to hear is different. Maybe there's a communication problem there. And that could be. But we're going to talk about
The communication problem is your head is so far up your ass you can't hear what people are saying.
we're going to talk about veterinarians because that's something I've talked about. Obviously, we don't have a veterinarian on staff. You know that, so do we. But we understand that we have 6 veterinarians that are available at any time. Now, I'm just going to tell you what comes back to us, and that if a vet tech or someone in the shelter identifies a canine that needs help from a veterinarian, that it's provided. So that's why I've asked Angie. Angie is managing that place. So Angie, tell us something. Hold on. Let Angie speak a minute. Go ahead, Angie.
Yeah, so we are working, I think it's around 6 vet clinics that we work with a lot. We've worked with Eye Institute, we've worked with a few different places. To my knowledge, we have dogs going every week to the
By the way, I was waiting. I feel bad for this Angie because I'm sure she probably has some degree in some public stuff and she's doing this and she's been stuck with this horrific job. And, and then I can't see her that well, but you look at her and you can just see the years getting added to this woman because of dealing with this situation. What a horrible situation to put her in. That you take this person who, admittedly said they know nothing about running an animal shelter, is now running the animal shelter. And then every week they have to do this, coming up here and covering the asses of these commissioners. If I were her, I'd be out the door.
Claremont Animal Hospital and my pet's vet, maybe it might be the other one, for spays, neuters, rabies vaccines. We do have new vet tech and a new vet tech assistant staff. They're just getting started. To say that they have walked into a lot is an understatement, and they're trying very, very hard. I'm sorry if you said you brought something to her attention that she didn't hear. I'm happy to look into any of those. From what I've seen, they're very, very thorough in their care. I think we have excellent medical staff now. They've asked me, can we send this dog out for further testing? Yes. So I don't know some of the specifics.
By the way,
you
this
might be
stuff
referring
is
to, but
all
I
like
think we will.
Groundhog Day.
And so
It's the
now
same
I understand
stuff every
we have
week.
3 employees that are coming on. Is that correct here on the 2 on the 29th?
Everything fixed.
We had 3. We have 2.
Hold on. We had 3, now we have 2. And by the way, the revolving door will keep spinning because it's a toxic environment and some sucker signs up to work there and it's going to be run screaming out of the building not that long after they get there.
We got your email. Your email says that is happening. Is that what's the
Can I-
policy there?
Yeah, go ahead.
So it was brought to my attention. What I didn't know was happening is that non-shelter staff were moving dogs out of a facility and we didn't know about it. And so I have been preparing a motion to go before you all recommending me right now as the acting kennel manager would be authorized by you to make those calls, to sign off on those calls. I'm not saying I have to bring, Morty the dog up to you every single time and say, hey, I want to take this dog 2 weeks from now. To be able to make those decisions quickly. But I firmly believe it needs to come from the shelter staff to be the ones that are authorizing it. It is our liability.
So you're saying the volunteers are moving the dogs out?
Yeah, it was brought to my knowledge that it happened over the weekend. I don't know the extent of the situation, but I do know that it happened over the weekend.
Good. The volunteers should kidnap the damn dogs and have a prison break for the dogs and go take them to shelters where people care about dogs.
We've seen it.
I saw it.
I saw it this morning.
Yeah, this morning. Second was sent out before this morning, so you didn't even know. She just made it up and said you guys said it.
No, I said that
No,
I needed to seek approval, that the board needed to give approval for authorization. I'm not sure what the.
No, that you know how email works. Email, somebody sends an email, somebody says forward, you know, and it comes in. That's how we got it. That's how.
Thanks for the explanation how email works, David Painter.
Excuse me. You put out a note yesterday that was copied out and shelter love in the chat room.
Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. This is
We
just
got
us
Angie
addressing
here.
it. We got
Angie,
Angie.
Continue
here.
public
You bet.
participation.
You bet. That's all right. Public participation is closed. Andy, thank you. We're going to move on.
Oh, see, I pointed this out. They close public participation so that they can have an excuse that nobody in the room is allowed to talk at this point. These people have no moral and ethical compass. And the one woman, I'm sorry to tell you, these are Christian facades. They are not, they don't care about these people in the room.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on with item number E, the consent agenda. Board, you've had a consent agenda that was prepared for you. Are there any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda
Can
for?
we hold on a second?
Sure.
I'm sorry, but
Hold on, Bonnie's going to talk. Bonnie, the Joe Biden of the Claremont County Commissioners, is going to talk.
Oh, you're fine.
Commissioner Painter. Oh, never mind. They're walking
Hold
in. I just make a statement real quick.
Oh, now Claire's going to.
Any comments by the board?
I'd like to just make one comment this morning that continuously, there's one person that is involved with these volunteers.
Okay, hold on. So Bonnie, the Joe Biden, gets pushed to the side. She already asked to talk, but Claire wants to talk, so she goes first. So go ahead, Claire.
Constantly goes out on Facebook and blasts and says things before they're even brought to this board. And secondly, that person in particular, I have at least 6 times invited that person to meet with me as a commissioner or anyone on this board, including with Angie, who has been down there working her head off in the shelter. I have offered morning, noon, night at that person's convenience to please meet with me and discuss any of the problems. That's number one. And number two, I walked over to that second chair and handed her my card and said, please call me. I am willing to discuss anything with you. This person has been invited to several volunteer meetings. They refuse to show up. They boycott the meetings and then turn around when a meeting is canceled and accuse Angie of not listening to them. We have a duty to make sure we know where these animals are. And I, for one, am very concerned about somebody who takes a dog out of our shelter, posts things on Facebook with a minor child in a car sitting right next to an animal. That how do you even know what the behavior of that animal would be like? If that dog were to turn around and bite that child, it would be on this county and on this board for allowing it.
I don't think if they stole the dog out of the shelter, it would be on you. Is it on you if you adopt out a dog and then the dog does something?
I believe that Angie has put in protocols that try to keep everyone safe. And I'm sorry that people don't like it, but there is an order to this program. And if anyone has any concerns about how things, and we're not perfect, anybody has any concerns about how things.
Whoa, hold on. That's the biggest admission we've heard. We're not perfect. Just remember that they're not perfect. They're, almost perfect.
Now, please, let's bring up the pictures of what this was like when this board took over the shelter and the conditions those dogs were living.
I'll give you a tip. It was better. It was better before the commissioners took over the shelter. It wasn't as much of a Auschwitz as it is now. So this is all bullshit. You've had 2 humane societies that cared a lot more for the animals than you do. You ran both of them out of the place, and they both tried to do the best they could when you underfunded them, and they had to over fundraise to make the thing work. And you wouldn't listen. You went down this path. It's a complete disaster. And now you're sitting up there continually making excuses. You're never going to win. How dumb are these people? They are never going to win this argument on the shelter because they can't fix the shelter. So why would you sit there and keep arguing in favor of something you can't fix being the solution? That tells you how bad this Republican leadership is. I am a conservative Republican. I'm not saying to not vote for Republicans. What I am saying is on some of these, I'm probably going to leave my ballot blank. Okay. And what we need to do is demand that we get effective leaders, conservative leaders, not these crony facades that are in there, like these guys who are basically come through a system that rigs the primary so that we get the people that kiss the ass of the party the most in office versus the most competent people.
When I first came on board, I'll add to that. This was already in the process of taking it back from the facilities that was running it. My first trip up there was unbelievable. You opened that door and it was, but I mean, they want to give it back to them? I don't think so. No dog deserves to live in the conditions that they were living in when they had it either. But one other thing, if I can.
Okay.
The email that I saw that was Angie received, they say they want to work with us, but when Angie gets an email from a volunteer saying she's had it, she's done, no need to contact her anymore because she refuses to have any meetings with anyone or talk to anyone about it. How do you work together when you're saying, I won't talk to you anymore? This is a volunteer saying that. So I'll be quiet.
Angie, thanks for your dedication.
I think part of this is, I don't know this story about this volunteer, okay? But if I were one of these people, I would say, unless and until you, the commissioners, put this thing out to bid and start getting on a path to admit strategically you made a huge mistake here, I would give a giant F you to these commissioners also, because they're not going to fix anything. They just want to have meetings, blah, blah, blah. You know, how many weeks in a row do we have a replay of the same exact thing happening at the commissioner meeting, where they go through the same mumbo jumbo, same excuses, same waste of time, and no solutions? There's zero solutions. It's always, there's going to be somebody hired, 3 more people are coming on. That's not the problem. The problem is the toxic environment that creates a revolving door and a strategic decision to make the shelter a government operated shelter when that doesn't work. And what more evidence? The kind of question is, how much more evidence do these commissioners need that it doesn't work? That it doesn't work. They should have long ago cut their losses and got out, but they're too dumb to do that. They're just going to keep digging. I think I need to get a special shovel made with their names engraved on it and come and give it to them as an award. Here's the shovel for digging your hole.
To the shelter. We know that this is a very, very difficult situation. And just to draw back the scope of these conversations, the scope of these conversations is we run an animal shelter here that's in accordance with the ORC and the 955. We have a couple of requirements to take care of. We're responsible for stray animals in this county, and obviously animals that bite people and who are a nuisance. And our responsibility is to kennel and shelter them. Our responsibility is to find the rightful owner. If we can find the rightful owner, obviously our wardens prosecute those that hoard animals and cause animal cruelty. And then one of the things is that we're responsible for canines that the owners are irresponsible. They come to our shelter in our particular facility. I have went to that shelter many times. I've talked to the staff. I have asked them, is there an animal here that needs care, that needs to see a veterinarian? Are there any animals that aren't watered, that aren't in a safe environment? Are there any animals here that need any attention? And the answer every time has been no, Mr. Painter. Things are well taken care of. And I've walked.
I would love to hear these people talking after the king leaves. After the grand poobah comes in and acts like he's going to solve everything and ask them, what do you need? And, this is just horrible leadership, horrible management. And everybody I think would know anything he does is just to cover his ass. It's not because he's really trying to solve the problem.
Shelter. Now I will tell you that animals in a shelter who have to be in cages is not a great memory for me. I'm an animal lover. There's no doubt about that. Does it cause me stress? It does.
I cry every time I walk out of there.
Right. I do not like to see animals that aren't the property of a responsible owner. But
if you cared about animals and this caused you stress, how can you go through so many meetings in a row that's a replay of the same exact script of you have failed, you have to change it? It's mind-boggling.
I understand that as commissioner of this county, we have a responsibility, to take care of those animals that are entrusted to us, even though that they fall to us due to ill will by other people. So that makes it very, very difficult. We will continue to keep open requisitions. We will try to get you all the help that we can get as fast as we can get it. And hopefully these two that will be starting will help. We will depend, on the jail population and obviously our trustee program to continue to provide a safe environment for the dogs that we have to kennel.
And we have some great volunteers.
We do.
We have some great volunteers who are not out on social media, always trying to make, I don't know what it's about, but I could just tell
There's a
you.
motive behind it all, Commissioner.
We will
Thank you.
move on.
Thank you.
So this is where we are. What the biggest problem probably is that somebody goes on social media and criticizes the Grand Poobah commissioners or criticizes the way this shelter has operated or is operating. This is just going to keep playing on and week after week. I'll tell you what the commissioners want, volunteers, is for you to get tired and worn out and quit coming to the meetings, and then the dogs can just suffer and you can languish and they can get their free labor, and it is what it is. Unfortunately, I have nothing but praise for volunteers that help, but what can happen in the shelter environment is the volunteers not drawing a line actually perpetuated the nightmare that is the Claremont County shelter. Why? Because the volunteers care too much to let the animals suffer, so they will intervene when the county is not doing their job. And while that alleviates the individual problem of a given animal, it also contributes to the long-term mess that we have had. And at some point, frankly, I don't know what the right answer is other than this has to go out to bid. And I frankly think that there may need to be some more short-term suffering by some of the animals to actually get this changed, because as long as it keeps going on this way, it's never going to change. And we are seeing, for some reason, the very point that we seem to be the only county in the region that's unable to work with a humane society, and our conservative Republican commissioners have expanded the government to take over the shelter. This message apparently just can't get through, can't register, and these guys keep doing the same dumb thing. So that is the comments from the commissioner meeting just this week. where good news is that your county commissioners that are each paid like $100,000 each to be county commissioners are now spending a significant percentage of their time working on something that in other counties commissioners wouldn't be involved with that much. They would get the contract in place, run it, and it would just run. And they would periodically evaluate his performance, make some adjustments if necessary. But these guys, by what they have done, this is a model of what big government, unaccountable government, bureaucratic government, uninnovative government, dumb government does. It's like these same people here that are professed to be conservative Republicans, these same people would say, if government tries to take over healthcare, that's bad because government's bad. But they take over the healthcare of animals in an animal shelter that nobody else does in our region and maybe in the whole state. Think of how dumb this is. Think of how inconsistent this is. Think of how this makes no sense. So I am totally with, I'm critical of that. I think the message from the volunteer community and the animal loving community needs to be single-minded of focus. And it needs to start in the middle and in the end. This has got to go out to bid. This has got to get to a humane society running this place. Take the same amount of money or even less money than the county is currently spending and get a humane society in place, and it will put us on the road to recovery. We had two humane societies that both said the same thing. The county was underfunding the shelter when they were in charge, expecting them to do too much fundraising as a ratio, and they were right. They have been proven right, and the county has been proven that it does a worse job. Bullshit aside, the county is doing a worse job running a shelter than either of the humane societies, and it is never going to get better. But on the other hand, it is kind of funny to watch these commissioners make complete fools and asses out of themselves and be willing to just destroy the Republican Party. I mean, think about this. This issue is getting so much airplay, so much coverage as to how stupid this all is, how bad it looks. And you have Republican commissioners arguing for a big government model to run a shelter that nobody in our region does and totally unable to solve problems. So what's the point? Big government Republicans totally unable to solve problems. Maybe these guys are Romney Republicans or something, but they are not solving anything. It's not going to change until this goes back to a humane society. And it's not going to change until they can sit up there and admit honestly, we screwed up. They were right. We were wrong. And here's the problem. I don't know that they can. I don't know that Bonnie Batchelor, David Painter, and Claire Corcoran could admit their mistakes. I don't know what would happen. They've gone so long without being able to admit anything, still making the same bullshit excuses. I don't know that I'd trust them even if they did admit their mistakes. And the end result is nothing's going to get solved. And we need different people in the commissioner chairs. Maybe some of these people should leave. Maybe I can find Jesse Kramig, one of them, or something, and find some reason they need to leave so somebody else can get appointed to these positions. But if they're this bad running an animal shelter, think of how bad they are running the overall government. Just stop and think about that for a second. They're this bad running an animal shelter. Think of how bad they are running the overall Claremont County government that doesn't have people monitoring them like these animal lover volunteers that are enraged by how it's run. But here's the tip. Our whole county government runs this way. Completely inefficient, ineffective. Why do you think we have so many people get kicked out of office for corruption, effing somebody in a parking lot? This is systemic in our government. It just becomes very obvious in this case because you have this community of volunteers that are not getting paid. In other areas, people got their hand in the cookie jar. These volunteers are not getting paid, and they bring it to the surface. But I'm telling you, these people, and it's not just them, politicians in general do not trust them, do not believe they like you, do not believe they care, and do not believe that they have the ability to run things or to solve problems. Their only ability is to succumb to pressure, and these guys got to at some point be pressured enough to admit their mistake and fix it, or they got to be gone. It's that simple. It's never going to get fixed without going back to humane society.